G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 18th of August 2026. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate. As the war continues, I shall continue to bring you comprehensive news and analysis from both sides of the war. As we look at the Ukrainian map from Ukraine, we see Ukraine is reporting attacks on Kyiv, Kyiv, Odessa, Zaporozhye, Sumy. What's this again? Sorry. Pranichki. Alright. There was an attack on the road yesterday evening. It sort of just fits into the 24 hours. There was a glide bomb attack again today on Kremensk. Russian forces Russian Air Forces overflew Kremensk again to show their dominance. Although, again, I have said often that is a bold and risky move, because it's not because Russia could jam effectively Ukrainians' air defenses. It's just pot luck that they had exhausted the Ukrainians and caught them off guard at low altitude. It is a very bold and risky move. Again, it could just be a video, as some people suggest. Now, in response to yesterday's attack, Russia reported around 600 drones, 180 shot down within the Moscow perimeter. We don't know exactly what was hit, but we do know at least one Wildberries location was hit. And we'll get to more than that later. But, over 800 locations, starting at Belgorod region going north. But, of course, the Russian response appears to only be an attack on Kyiv, although there are other attacks that were probably already planned. But I would suggest that tomorrow we'll see something bigger than today's response. But there was a heavy bombardment of Sumy that was probably already planned. There seems to be no specific, retaliation. That's what I was looking for. Retaliation. Though Russia has mainly stuck to its grinding strategy of random pattern attacks, though they are starting to settle into areas, making their attacks a little more predictable, such as their attacks on Odessa to maintain their blockade of the port. Now, we have no significant towns taken, though we do have fighting here on the border region. Most of the border towns have either been cleared out or seized by either side. Now, there is very little movement on the battlefield itself, though there are a lot, and there are less attacks today than yesterday. But however, the significant increase is the number of cross-border shellings into Ukraine, with fires reported after a serious bombardment of Sumy. However, there aren't that many overall across the entire battlefield, with, as you can see, no significant progress anywhere. And you can see there's a reduced amount of tax. Is there anything from here? Nothing really. This could be anything. Yeah, anything. Now, since Russian progress yesterday, there has been no follow-up other than defending their current positions. Kupiansk and Koshnikovia remain the white whales of the Russian army. But they're not the only ones where they are significantly bogged down. Remember, they are fighting a numerically superior force, which does... Remember, Ukraine has mobilized more of its populace despite the decline in population. This, of course, will deplete their long-term manpower and will lead to an eventual critical shortages. Some Ukrainian MPs are already complaining about critical shortages of manpower, and they are trying, allegedly, to lure Ukrainians back to Ukraine. Allegedly. Europe has been rather mixed. There has been reports of visa revision, but so far there has been no sign of mass deportations of military-aged men back to Ukraine. And yeah, so today's map has not changed. Yeah, from yesterday significantly. It's any trenches that Ukraine has gained in the last 40 days in here. There seems to be very little fighting, and where there is, Russia's gained very little ground. So all these gains for large losses, which Ukraine claims heroes don't die when asked about their casualties. And so you have them claiming 10,000 casualties, which is unconfirmed. And for 40 days, 10,000, that's rather low considering Ukraine is losing around 1,000 a day on average, which is actually down. Now, before I continue, this channel is sponsored by you, the viewers, Empire of Elves. Empire of Elves, one word, .myshopify.com, your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing. Thank you for your purchase. Yeah. You know, it defaults to my currency, not yours, which is weird. I know, but you scroll down, select USD, and there you go. They are actually made... so the ceramic is the standard ceramic. That's the magic. Yeah, the standard ceramic coffee cup is actually made in the US. If you're in the US, if you're in Europe, it's made in Europe. There are 28 locations. Now, Russia has revised and revived the Tunguska M1. Now, they have upgraded technologies, but the 2K22 is a Soviet-era tracked, self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, originally designed to counter US and European helicopters in the fictional World War III as planned out, where a European army led by the US allegedly was going to invade the USSR, which never happened and was never planned for, and Europe was never building a massive army to invade. Quite the contrary, they were going through periods of disarmament quite rapidly to pay for social welfare programs and shifting its NATO burden to the US until recently. Now, Russian planners did originally scale back production. Now, this is designed for low altitude air defences, primarily for ground forces. This is a frontline air defence system. Now, its main feature and main advantage is its high speed to win 30 millimeters. Now, yes, the Russians have revised and gotten some of its Zu-23s and upgraded them also to 30 millimeters and put them onto vehicles as well. So, again, these used to be 23 millimeters as well. These are up the same autocannons. These are just electric powered, where the other ones are just gas recoil powered, which has a slower firing rate. These are one of the fastest autocannons currently in service. Its main advantage, however, is its tactical ability to switch from guns to missile. So it can spot larger targets and engage them at 10 kilometers using an upgraded radio frequency proximity fuse, as well as infrared tracking. However, this gun effective to 3 to 4 kilometers. Now, these do disagree with the Soviet stats, right? But overall, it has both electric, optical, and thermal tracking systems. And it has been deployed across Russia as fast as possible to take on flamingos. You see there. It prepares. It does. In search mode as it prepares to fire. Now, overall, it was meant to be replaced by much bigger systems like the Panzer, but given the Russian position, instead of recycling old equipment into new equipment, they're putting whatever upgrades they can on current equipment. That shows the budgetary constraints as Russia seeks to match the firepower that Europe is able to provide to Ukraine, because Russia cannot cripple Ukraine's drone production. It can cripple Ukrainian industry, but Ukrainian drone production is in. These are drones provided by Poland, Romania, France, Germany, and England primarily. Although they also buy. They also have what's called the Drone Army, which provides drones around the world and ships them in large pallets. I've seen them myself fly out of Australia. I live near an airport. People have... I've seen donation runs where people have gotten commercial drones and packed them up for Ukraine. Don't underestimate third-party interference in this war. There is a lot of third-party interference in this war. And this is one of the ways to reduce Russia's, I suppose, logistics. Ukraine is targeting wild berries because they can provide drones from China into Russia directly. So that's why they're being targeted. Doesn't mean but of course, it's also because, my opinion, is they're also doing this out of petty jealousy because Ukraine wants to be, and has stated before, well, they haven't stated in the last 6 months, but they have stated before, they want to be the logistics hub of the Eurasian rail for China. Now, the war has bitterly divided Russia. 2/3 of Russia right now, yeah, they do call him King Putin, by the way, and the dissidents, which could add up to anywhere to, depending on the polls, between 15 to 32% of Russian citizens, has always been dissident. Russia probably has the most contrarians on the planet. When it was the Tsar, the contrarians were communist. When it was initially, when it was the Tsar, the contrarians were Liberal Democrats. Then they were communists. And when the communists came to power, the dissidents were Democrats. And when the Democratic Alliance came to power, the Russian Democratic Alliance came to power, right? They became communists again. Now they are sort of split between Russian Republican, not exactly like American Republicans. It's more like French Republicans. They're still so they're more, there's centre left, centre right, and the populists. And the populists are split, and not many, but a few don't support Putin. But the vast majority of Russians seem to be populist. They want the best of every system applied, whatever the best solution is, applied to the problems now. So when it comes to something like private enterprise, they don't want state ownership. But when it comes to large-scale projects, resources, and other things that most countries do consider state assets, but also military contractors, to be at least state-controlled, if not state-owned. Now, state-controlled limits the profit that can be made and the wages of those working in those companies. So they don't only just... So it is antithetical to the American system, where the American system is based on what you believe the market can bear rather than true value. Now, that can backfire on you when perception of value is low and you try to sell the product, but your cost of production is high. Now, Russia has a law. You criticize... Now, it works in stages. You criticize the war, you could go to jail or be fined. But eventually, if you are what they consider a threat to Russian stability, you could be stripped of rights, including citizenship, and banned from entry into Russia. Now, this ban is up to 50 years. Now, if you are of another ethnicity other than Russian, you can wait in limbo in Europe for up to 1 year and be either relocated to Syria, Armenia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, sometimes, or Canada, or sometimes South America. It's rare that France, Britain, Germany take in a Russian dissident these days. Most are still in limbo waiting, knowing that even if they get their asylum granted in Europe, they may be, and this is a big maybe, isolated to parts of Eastern Europe. And Eastern Europe doesn't want them. They find themselves in small towns, pretty much treated the same as someone in witness protection. Most Europeans don't want them, considering them a security risk, claiming that it's a Russian infiltration method to inject spies into Europe. And, of course, isn't that what you did to them? That's every accusation treat as a confession. Now, we don't know the fate of the majority because there's no specific. This article is incomplete. All of them are. Yeah, record number of drone bombs were dropped today. Ukrainian casualties piled up. But Europe is increasingly making it more difficult for any asylum seeker, with Russians at the bottom of the list. The writer of the article, by the way, was a Russian dissident who was of Armenian descent and was able to get political asylum in Armenia. And that's only because he had a degree in political science. But the numbers are difficult to get. How many are relocated and where outside of Europe? But it appears from research that the majority seeking asylum in Europe who are Russian are relocated. Now, there has in the past been attempts to silently court Russian officials by the CIA and other security services. If you are caught in Russia with that email on your device, that can get you jail time. You are either meant to immediately report it or delete it. I think the new law actually says report it, but as far as I know, there was a law that enabled you. Basically, if you have foreign contact, you have to, and you are a government official, you have to report it, even if it's say, hi, I went to YouTube and I commented on Dave's channel and he replied saying thank you. They still have to report it. They risk jail time. So Russians are silent most of the time. They use VPNs, but they don't comment. They don't. But you'll see them on Facebook sometimes. They're usually exiled Russians. And why would exiled Russians be defending Russia? Well, they're defending Russia, not the war. There's a difference. So, try to separate the two when you understand that that Russia's opposition party would love for you to believe they're a powerful, large, motivated force, but the majority are Russian Ukrainians. They do not have Russian citizenship. They themselves have been kicked out of Ukraine, and they can't go back to Russia. So they're angry for different reasons, but they're angry at the war because they got kicked out of Ukraine. So I think the majority of ethnic Russians outside of Russia right now come from Eastern Europe. Now, I don't know how many have been forced out of other countries, but I do know Ukraine makes it a public boast that they purge the orcs. And yet Europe turns a blind eye to that. Now, Russia has mobilized its largest air defense operation probably since 2023. And as I said, they have pulled out of storage. Anyway, these are 12.7 millimeters. A lot Soviet-era trucks, mobilized its army en masse across multiple states, oblasts, that's it. Now, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they had others as well, other days, averaging 200, but in other articles you can find days where they spiked. But out of 620, 200 made it to Moscow, 180 shot down. And that's Now, again, while it appears to be Russian retaliation for Ukrainian attacks, this was probably a specifically arranged operation, right? Organized well ahead of time by the Russian military to attack the main energy and blast furnace facilities at a plant where they had been testing air defenses, wearing them down, wearing them out, probably sending dummies or electronic warfare systems to map the entire region, to map the path, and then program a Pacific missile for a Pacific route, probably multiple, knowing, based on previous attacks, how many would get through. Without giving away any details here, unfortunately, we do not know exactly how many, but the article switches to the Ukrainian attacks on Wildberry. So a plant known as Kyiv 111 was hit. It was a combination of attack drones. It manufactures attack drones, interceptors, and anti-aircraft drones. And the net result is a reduction in production. So Ukraine is reporting more than one strike. Again, they're not giving away anything either. But Russia's claim is they have driven Ukraine's military industry into crisis. Well, in the last 6 months, more production facilities have left Ukraine, and Ukraine has actually publicly boasted opening a new drone facility in Poland. And they will probably open 3 more by the end of this year. They are shifting their production out of Ukraine and increasing their production out of Ukraine. They've been reluctant to share technologies with Poland, but they need aircraft. Why? Aircraft still remain their best anti-drone defense. Russia is mobilizing helicopters and its air force. The majority of its air force is engaged in drone patrols. Now, they probably should have developed, but it is a matter of priority. But they should have developed and a better exit strategy from the beginning. Both sides are alleged to be seeking an exit to the war, but Ukraine's position always maintains a maximalist position and and for 3 years we've heard nothing but we must negotiate from a position of strength. You ever seen a prize fight where the end is most bitter, where the two are just pretty much hugging and constantly pulled apart? Well, that's what today feels like. And a lot of days have felt like. That the last year has been slow. Logistics on both sides have been squeezed. Both sides' drone industries and missile industries are primary targets, because it is the primary weapon of this war is now drones. And we are now seeing plans for robotic armies. We've seen the robot dog, and if you haven't, there's Boston Dynamics. There's a number of search terms. Boston Dynamics, Chinese attack dog, Russian tank robot, Ukrainian warbot, although I think that one was actually taken down. The Ukrainian warbot appears to be a humanoid robot, which was tested. Now, the Ukrainian warbot is made in the USA. So, America's creating Terminators, everyone. Allegedly. But we are seeing, but we have seen, actually, the Russian Terminator tank attempt to be made autonomous. But many in the Russian planning said no, they do not want autonomous weaponry, except for target identification. Now, Russia apparently is also producing a new high-speed. This is the third time they've announced a new high-speed drone or missile in the last month. But it appears that they are testing weapons at an increased rate, which means they're either rolling stuff off early or just so happens a number of projects are finishing at the same time. We don't know yet, but we do know the trade between China and Russia has dramatically increased in the last month. It has finally been confirmed sanctions are not working. Whatever loss of trade Russia has is being absorbed by China. In return for resources and oil, China has exported more electronics than last month, more sanctioned goods, knockoff NVIDIA chips, as well as smuggled chips, as well as seized shipments. It is alleged that Chinese customs officials are going through all the seized exports under Chinese sanctions or stuff that's frozen on the ports that can't be unloaded because of sanctions. As Western companies flee China, their warehouses are being looted. Even before the companies leave, China is anticipating all the Western companies out by 2026. You'll soon hear about more property seizures in China. But it's now generally believed NVIDIA chips that were sent to China for commercial retail have been redirected by China to Russia. So what a company would normally sell in 6 months, over the last month, right? You know how companies they import a large amount, and over time they dish them out from the docks or warehouses, trying to keep shipping at its minimal as possible, because the distances, they need to maximize their profits. Because the profits that sells on the sale of the product in China come from volume, not from retail. Retail in China is very, very unprofitable for most companies. Most companies go broke. They open retail, they sell a lot of goods, they get their initial profit, and then they get killed by Chinese customs, which can take months to get at a dock. So they suddenly realize that they can't ship every month into China. They have to ship once and pay a really big, and hope that they sell it very quickly. So NVIDIA and other companies, they're trying to adjust their market, which means we're going to be seeing a reduction in models as 3,000, 4,000, and possibly anything between 21 and 25 really are going to go out of production. But those chips that were made in China are now confirmed. More of them have been turning up in Russia. But with NVIDIA cutting the production, and we'll see knockoff chips of lower quality, and you now see them appear on the commercial markets as well. China is trying to sell knockoff NVIDIA cards between 100 and 160, 170 as second-hand, and they're being snapped up. Again, I think a lot of it by Russian purchasing agents, but also Iran. So we're going to see a possible tech slowdown because manufacturers can't keep up. The war, Iran and Russia, and possible flare-ups elsewhere. Again, with Europe and other countries all around the world now, even my own, increasing drone production. All we're now waiting is for the date. I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but this escalation, it's all Trump derangement. You can blame Trump derangement. That Europe and Canada and other countries who would not back Trump in any peace effort whatsoever, right? Instead, Europe and all the other countries, they want to double down on war in Ukraine, while trying to prolong the Iranian conflict to embarrass America so that Europe can increase its power in the Middle East, which it won't, other than Turkey. Turkey's the only beneficiary. Well, Turkey and China. So, strategically, Europe is causing World War III. Has yet to cause World War III, but is in the process of causing it. And if it's a matter of chicken, and China is not going to back down. They are trying to find a way, however, to get Taiwan to give in. That ain't happening. Taiwan is looking at the Ukrainian war and saying, we can make war just as costly for China with drone swarms and strategic targeting, because most of China's industries are within standard missile range. Now, it comes down to the fact that there are people who just won't give up on historical grievances. There are people who want to put their names in the history books, and if they can't go down as the hero, they'll go down as the villain. And it comes down to the fact that the vast majority of people treat politics like sport and just want their side to win no matter what. They look at World War II and go, the good guys won. Did they though? The good guys died on the battlefield. The corrupt politicians got corrupter. You look at... I think most people are naive about the war and the post-war era. So many people thinking they're going to create a better world. You have no way of knowing that. Again, you look at World War II and its fallout. The communist era. We had golden opportunities, again, squandered, because some little ponytail gets on a loudspeaker and says, we're oppressed! And now we have so many crises around the world. Because so many people play grievance politics every day. The UN is uninterested in peace, undemocratic, and totally useless. It is probably the biggest failure of the post-war era. It will go down in history as the Second League of Nations. Because it cannot set an agreeable set of standards. A a universal framework that applies to all members. They don't know what to do with non-members. They don't know what to do with belligerents. They have so many unanswered questions. Because if it was the United Nations, if it operated as per charter, they would be working for peace in Ukraine. They would be working for peace for Taiwan. The only time Europe has allegedly worked for peace was Kosovo. And that's only because they used the Albanian Muslims to attack Russia's ally Serb so that they could occupy Serbia and put an air base there. Nothing is what it seems. And if you want to tell me that all these groups are fighting for rights, why isn't there a UN for men? Why is there only a UN and a UN for women? Why is the UN for all oppressed nations when the most oppressed nation in the world is probably Tibet? No. This is why we can't have peace. This is why we can't have nice things. And no matter how many times people keep telling me they're working towards a better world, I look at their posts and their feeds and see nothing but vitriol and hatred. No, you cannot work for peace if you're calling everyone a Nazi, if you're calling... And even Russia and its accusation. Russia has to... Yeah, you can't go around calling Ukraine Nazi if you're not going to stand up to Iran. You have... In a genuine multipolar world, you're going to have to accept that Ukraine is not part of your orbit. You have to accept. There has to be a fundamental change both in Russia and Ukraine before we can see peace, or we see World War III. It is that blatantly obvious to me. I don't know how blatantly obvious it is to you, that it seems Europe wants World War III. Changed my mind. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I really appreciate each and every one of you. You can find my links in the link tree, which is in my profile. Scan the QR code on the screen or the description below. See you in the next video, and bye for now.